Hey everyone, throwaway account because I honestly can't believe I'm writing this. I'm a 36-year-old guy living in Cary, North Carolina. Been married to my wife, Jenna, for almost 9 years now. We weren't perfect, but I thought we had a good thing. You know, house in a nice neighborhood, 2 dogs, regular date nights when we could fit them in. Life wasn't fireworks every day, but it was stable. It was supposed to be safe. I started swimming again about a year ago, mostly for health reasons. Got a little paunch in the middle, cholesterol creeping up. Figured it was time. I joined this fitness club a couple towns over and signed up for adult swim lessons to get my stamina back. My coach, Todd, was this tanned, overconfident guy in his early 40s. Always cracking jokes, slapping people on the back like we were old friends. At first, I thought he was just a harmless goofball. Anyway, the first cracks started showing in my marriage about 6 months back. Jenna started getting real cold about the little things. Snapping when I forgot to load the dishwasher, rolling her eyes when I'd talk about work, that kind of thing. She stopped asking me about my day altogether. Her phone, which used to just sit on the counter at night, was now glued to her hand. Always face down, always on silent. At first, I made excuses for her. Work was stressful. Maybe it was seasonal depression. Maybe I wasn't doing enough around the house. I twisted myself into a pretzel trying to be better, buying her flowers, surprising her with dinner, even planning a weekend getaway she canceled last minute because she was too busy. But the truth was, something was already broken. I just didn't know how deep the cracks went yet. I probably never would have found out if it weren't for the stupid towel. About a month ago, I stayed late after practice to get some extra laps in. Todd had already packed up and left. The locker room was mostly empty, and I was gathering my stuff when I noticed a towel on the bench. Bright pink, with Jenna's initials stitched on the corner. At first, my brain tried to make it make sense. Maybe she left it when she came to watch me swim, but she hadn't come to the pool in months. Said it smelled like chlorine and broken dreams. I laughed it off at the time, but now it stuck in my head like a bad song lyric. I picked up the towel, and something fell out, a receipt. Coffee shop, right down the street from the fitness center. 2 lattes, extra whipped cream. Timestamped at 8:43 p.m. last Thursday. Thursday was the night she said she was stuck at work, pulling overtime on a big client pitch. That was the first punch to the gut. Still, denial is a hell of a drug. I told myself maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was meeting a friend. Maybe anything but what my gut was already screaming at me. I didn't want to believe it. But something ugly had started growing in the back of my mind, and it wasn't going away. The next Thursday, I pretended to have a late meeting. I left the house like normal but parked down the street and waited. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear the clock ticking on the dashboard. At 7:40 p.m., Jenna's car pulled out of the driveway. She wasn't dressed for work, no business suit, no laptop bag. Just jeans, flip-flops, and a fitted tank top she hadn't worn around me in months. I followed her. Like some desperate PI who never wanted the job. My palms were sweating on the steering wheel, and every turn she made felt like another nail in the coffin. She didn't go to the office. She didn't even pretend to. She drove straight to the fitness club. Straight to Todd. I watched from my car as she parked next to his Escalade, stepped out like she belonged there, and threw her arms around him. No hesitation. No checking over her shoulder. Like she wasn't even worried if someone saw. They kissed. Right there in the open. Right in front of the building where I tried to better myself, tried to be someone she could be proud of. I can't even describe what that moment felt like. It wasn't like in the movies where you hear a dramatic violin swell or scream into the night sky. It was quieter. Dead. Like someone turned the volume all the way down inside me. I waited till they went inside, then I sat there for another 20 minutes just existing. Wondering what the hell I was supposed to do. I thought about just driving away, pretending I didn't know, keeping the lie alive for a little longer because at least then, I can still say I had a wife. But something inside me snapped. I drove home, paced around the house like a caged animal, then decided if she wanted to live in lies, she could do it somewhere else. I packed a duffel bag for her, not mine, hers. All her favorite things, too. That expensive hair straightener she loved. The hoodie she stole from me our second year of dating. Even her stupid Bath and Body Works lotion that made the whole bathroom smell like cotton candy hell. I left the bag on the front porch. When she got home 3 hours later, drunk on laughter and God knows what else, she looked at the bag like it was a bomb. "What's this?" she asked, fake confused. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just said, "It's your stuff. You can take it to Todd's. You two seem to have plenty to talk about." Her face changed so fast it was almost comical, from fake concern to guilt to rage in about 3 seconds flat. "You're crazy," she hissed. "Nothing is going on. He's just a friend." I stared at her for a long time. Longer than she deserved. Save it, I said. I saw you. That shut her up for good. She grabbed the bag, slammed the door behind her, and peeled out of the driveway like some discount soap opera villain. And just like that, I was alone in our house. No yelling, no crying, no dramatic goodbye. Just silence so thick it felt like it was pressing against my chest. The next morning, the house didn't feel like my house anymore. Everywhere I looked, I saw her. The coffee mug she always forgot on the counter. Her sandals kicked off by the door. A half-finished jigsaw puzzle we were supposed to work on together but never got around to because, as it turns out, she was busy. I should have gotten up, showered, gone to work like a normal person. But I just sat there on the couch for hours, feeling like the dumbest man alive. Around noon, my phone lit up. Jenna, can we talk? I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then lit up again. Jenna, you're blowing this way out of proportion. I almost laughed. Blowing it out of proportion. Like catching your wife lip-locked with your swim coach was just a minor misunderstanding, like forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. I didn't answer. I didn't know her that anymore. By 5 p.m., she was at the door again. Not knocking. Banging. Screaming like a banshee for me to open up. I sat on the stairs, listening, not moving. Let her scream. Let the neighbors peek through their curtains. Let it all rot in the daylight. Eventually, she left, leaving behind a string of angry texts about how I was ruining her life, how I was making a mistake we could never come back from. Good. That was the plan. That night, lying alone in my bed, the gravity of it all hit me full force. 9 years. Gone. Because I was too blind, too trusting, too in love with a woman who'd probably been lying to me for longer than I even realized. I thought about all the times she'd brushed me off with a quick kiss and a love you on her way out the door. About all the cold nights when she turned her back to me in bed and blamed it on being tired. Turns out you don't just lose a marriage in one big explosion. You lose it drip by drip, one tiny betrayal at a time, until one day you look around and realize there's nothing left but the smoke and ashes. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even blinked. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I made my decision. I was done. Not just with her. With everything that made me think staying was the right move. The hope, the fear, the twisted little dreams I'd clung to like a drowning man clinging to an anchor. The life I thought I had was gone. It was time to bury it. I woke up the next morning with the kind of clarity that only comes after you've hit rock bottom. No second guessing. No bargaining with myself. Just a cold, steady voice in my head telling me, burn it down, walk away, don't look back. First thing I did was call a lawyer. Not some bargain basement divorce attorney either, the real deal. My buddy Luke had gone through a nasty split last year and recommended this shark named Monica who, in his words, could gut a cheater without even smudging her lipstick. I sat in her office that afternoon, still running on no sleep, explaining everything. Jenna, Todd, the towel, the receipt. Monica listened without interrupting, her pen scribbling notes so fast it sounded like a wasp trapped under a glass. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, dead serious, good news is, North Carolina is one of the few states where you can still sue for alienation of affection. I blinked. You mean? I can sue Todd. She smiled. A slow, ruthless thing that made me like her instantly. Oh, you absolutely can. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not only could I divorce Jenna's lying ass, but I could also drag her boy toy into court and slap him with a lawsuit that would cling to his perfect little tan like a stain he couldn't scrub off. Finally, a little light at the end of the tunnel. That evening, I drove to the pool one last time. Not for a workout. Not to clear my head. I want to end it. I walked in like I owned the place, ignoring the receptionist who tried to stop me. I marched right out onto the pool deck, where Todd was running a lesson with a group of new swimmers. He saw me immediately. His tan face froze, and for a second, I swear he looked like a dog caught chewing up the couch cushions. I didn't shout, didn't swing, didn't make a scene. I just walked right up to him, handed him a manila envelope, the lawsuit paperwork Monica had prepped lightning fast, and said, in the calmest voice I didn't even know I still had, "You're served." Every eye at the pool was on us. Todd sputtered something about this isn't necessary, and let's be adults, the same crap cheaters always spew when the consequences show up. I turned and walked away without another word. No dramatics. No revenge fantasies. Just the cold satisfaction of knowing that for once, they didn't get to walk away clean. When I got home, I sat on the back porch, cracked a beer, and watched the sunset behind the trees. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the start of something better. It was the start of me again. 3 days after Todd got served, Jenna appeared at the house like a ghost I hadn't invited. No text, no call. Just a knock at the door, soft and tentative, like she was hoping the memory of everything she'd done could be erased if she just acted small enough. I opened it and found her standing there, arms wrapped around a grocery bag, wearing an old sweatshirt and a face scrubbed free of anything familiar. She looked nothing like the woman who had tossed our life into the fire. And yet, standing there, clutching a bag of takeout spaghetti like it was some kind of apology, she looked exactly like what she was, desperate. I could see it in her eyes before she said a word. This wasn't about love or regret or any kind of genuine attempt to fix what she broke. It was survival instinct. Todd was compromised now, tangled up in the lawsuit, exposed for what he really was. And Jenna, realizing she had no safe place to land, was trying to crawl back to the wreckage she'd created and pretend there was still something worth salvaging. She shifted on the porch, trying to look wounded, trying to summon a version of me that still existed before all the lies came to light, the version that would have forgiven her, fought for her, begged for her. But that man wasn't home anymore. The man standing inside that doorway had watched too many cold nights pass. He had felt the silence where laughter used to live. He had spent months trying to fix something that she had already replaced. So I stayed still. I let the distance between us stay heavy and awkward. And when she realized I wasn't reaching for her, wasn't inviting her back inside, the mask slipped. The hope drained out of her face, replaced by something harder, uglier, resentment at not being welcomed back into the life she had thrown away. The grocery bag slipped from her hands onto the porch with a soft, defeated sound. She didn't bother to pick it up. I heard her retreating footsteps, the slam of her car door, the screech of tires pulling away. I didn't move to the window. I didn't watch her leave. I simply closed the door, turned the lock, and leaned against the wall for a long, heavy breath. Inside the house, the silence still buzzed, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the empty kind that comes from being abandoned. It was the silence of something finally ending. I hadn't just closed the door on Jenna. I had closed the door on every lie I told myself about what we had been. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something almost like freedom. Telling people was harder than I expected. Not because I still cared about protecting Jenna. That ship had sailed the moment I saw her with Todd, but because putting it into words made it feel more real, more final. Saying it out loud stripped away the last layer of denial I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. I started small. A few close friends first, the ones who had known us as a couple, who had seen the Instagram photos and Christmas cards and assumed we were something solid. They reacted the way people always do when faced with someone else's tragedy, awkward sympathy, quiet rage on my behalf, promises of drinks and distractions. A few were honest enough to admit they weren't completely surprised. They had noticed the way Jenna started pulling away over the last year, laughing a little too hard at her phone, showing up late to dinners with excuses that didn't quite add up. They said they hadn't wanted to meddle. I didn't blame them. I hadn't wanted to see it either. Telling my family was worse. My mother's voice cracked when I told her, and I knew she was trying to figure out what she could have said or done to stop it. My father stayed silent for a long time, the way he always did when he didn't trust himself to speak without anger. Even my sister, who had never fully warmed to Jenna, seemed blindsided by how far things had fallen. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What was I going to do now? The truth was, I didn't know. I wasn't making 5-year plans or daydreaming about a clean start. I was still standing knee-deep in the ruins, brushing soot off my clothes and trying to breathe. There were moments when anger surged through me so hot it made my hands shake. When I thought about the wasted years, the lies, the effort I spent trying to fix something she had already decided wasn't worth saving. And there were other moments, quieter ones, where sadness crept in and settled like a stone in my chest. It wasn't just Jenna I was grieving. It was the life we built. The house that was supposed to hold a future. The inside jokes that would never be funny again. The plans we made without realizing one of us had already stopped believing in them. Some friends rallied around me immediately. Others drifted away, uncomfortable with the messiness of it all, unsure how to support someone who wasn't ready to smile and move on. And honestly, I didn't blame them either. Breakups are easy to cheer for when there's a clear villain and a clean ending. What nobody tells you is that betrayal doesn't leave you with a tidy narrative. It leaves you bleeding from 1,000 little cuts, trying to convince yourself you won't bleed out. I didn't need pep talks. I didn't need revenge fantasies. I just needed space. Time. A little bit of quiet to remember who I was before my life became a series of apologies for things I didn't do wrong. By the end of that first week, it became clear who was staying in my corner and who wasn't. And that, in its own way, felt like the first real step toward healing. A week after the truth came out, the house felt different. It wasn't just the absence of her things, the empty closet, the second toothbrush missing from the bathroom counter, the quiet kitchen that used to smell like her late-night baking experiments. It was heavier than that. Like the air itself was thicker, weighed down by all the conversations that would never happen and the apologies that would never be made. I thought that after she left, it would be easier. that anger would be enough to carry me through. But anger burns fast and leaves you standing in the ashes, unsure where to step next. I kept the house clean, kept myself busy. Work, errands, long walks with the dogs who still wandered from room to room looking for her. I told myself it was enough, that healing was just a matter of time and discipline, like recovering from a bad injury. It wasn't. Grief has a way of sneaking up on you when you think you're safe. It comes at the grocery store when you see your favorite brand of cereal. It comes late at night when you roll over in bed and instinctively reach for someone who isn't there. It comes in the quiet moments when you realize how much of your life was built around another person's presence and how empty the world feels without it. The calls and texts from Jenna slowed but never stopped completely. At first, they were pleading, full of apologies that somehow still placed the blame at my feet. When those didn't get a response, they turned angry, accusing me of being cold, heartless, unforgiving. I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't playing that game anymore. Then came the letter. Handwritten, left tucked under the welcome mat like some pathetic offering. She wrote about the memories we shared, the dreams we once whispered to each other in the dark, the vacations we never got to take. She wrote about how she had made mistakes but that love deserved second chances. She painted herself as a woman who was lost, confused, broken, anything but responsible for the choices she made with eyes wide open. For a moment, reading it, I felt the old guilt rising. The instinct to protect, to fix, to make it better. But the feeling passed. What she didn't understand, what she would never understand, was that it wasn't one betrayal that ended us. It was the 100 small ones before it. The moment she chose herself over us. The night she came home smelling like cheap perfume and excuses. Love isn't unconditional when it's one-sided. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the trash without ceremony. The house was still quiet, still heavy. But the silence didn't scare me anymore. It wasn't loneliness. It was space. Room to breathe. Room to rebuild. I wasn't lost. I wasn't confused. I was walking away, one heavy but certain step at a time. The first real change came quietly, the way all important things seem to. It wasn't some big moment where I woke up smiling or suddenly felt whole again. It was smaller than that. It was realizing, one morning, that I hadn't thought about her the second I opened my eyes. It was standing in the kitchen, making coffee, and noticing how different the house felt now, not haunted, just mine. I started fixing things. Not the house, that was still standing, still solid, even when I hadn't been, but the small neglected parts of my life that I had shoved to the background for too long. I finally hung the framed photos that had been gathering dust in the hallway closet. I cleared out the attic, finding old college notebooks and souvenirs from trips I barely remembered taking. I repainted the guest bedroom a deep, calm blue, not because anyone would be sleeping there anytime soon, but because I wanted to. Each small project was like stitching myself back together, one quiet task at a time. There were still bad days, of course. Days where I would catch a glimpse of a photo from a better year or stumble across some forgotten piece of her jewelry tucked into a drawer and feel that old familiar ache. Healing isn't linear. Some days the weight felt lighter. Some days it felt like it was welded to my spine. But I kept moving. I started swimming again, not at the same club, obviously. I found a smaller, older gym a few towns over where nobody knew me, where the pool smelled like bleach and the tiles were chipped but the water was clean and cold and honest. Lap after lap, stroke after stroke, I let the anger bleed out of me. Not for her. Not even for Todd. For myself. To remember that my body still worked. My heart still beat. My lungs still filled with air even after everything she took from me. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during the marriage. Not all of them stayed. Life has a way of drawing lines you don't always see coming, but the ones who did showed up in ways I hadn't realized I needed. A drink after work. A hike on a Sunday morning. A dumb group chat full of memes that made me laugh harder than I had in months. Little by little, the world started to feel bigger again. I wasn't better. I wasn't over it. But I was learning how to live alongside the loss, how to carry it without letting it sink me. The life I thought I had was gone. The future I thought I was building had collapsed. But standing there in the ruins, something surprising happened. I realized I was still standing. And that was enough. For now. Healing, as it turns out, isn't just about endurance. It's about being willing to let life surprise you again, even when you're still a little scared to hope. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that barely leaves a mark on memory. I was sitting at a coffee shop downtown, killing time before an appointment I wasn't looking forward to. Just me, a black coffee, and a notebook where I had been scribbling down plans for the future, trying to force something resembling direction into my drifting life. I didn't notice the woman at first. She wasn't flashy or loud. She just sat quietly 2 tables over, flipping through a battered paperback, her hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, a tiny scar across her knuckle catching the light when she turned a page. Something about her caught in my mind like a loose thread. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in that effortless, no-makeup kind of way, but because she looked peaceful, like she had carved out a little pocket of calm for herself in a world that hadn't exactly made it easy. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing in that quiet, unbothered energy. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't even attraction in the usual sense. It was more like recognition, a reminder that there were still people out there who knew how to sit still with themselves, who weren't desperate to fill every silence with noise. I didn't speak to her that day, didn't even smile. Just finished my coffee, closed my notebook, and left with the simple but profound feeling that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as broken as it had felt these past few months. Later, I would learn her name. I would learn the way her voice softened when she talked about the books she loved, the places she wanted to visit, the scars she carried quietly, without apology. But not yet. For now, it was enough to know she existed. That moments like that still existed. Small flashes of light in a world that had seemed so dark for so long. That evening, walking back to my car, I caught myself smiling without meaning to. It wasn't a big smile. Nothing anyone passing by would have noticed. Just a small tug at the corner of my mouth, a quiet acknowledgement that something inside me was still alive, still curious, still willing to believe in something better. The road ahead was still long. There were still hard days waiting for me, ghosts still lurking in the quiet hours. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid to take the next step. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. The biggest mistake I made during the marriage was letting someone else dictate the shape of my life. Without even realizing it, I had molded myself into the man she needed, steady, predictable, easy to blame when things got hard. I had sanded down my rough edges, quieted my own dreams, built a life where her happiness came first and mine was just an afterthought. Standing on the other side of it now, I realized how much of myself I had given away without a fight. It wasn't anger that drove me to start reclaiming it. It was something colder, something steadier. A kind of quiet resolve that said, never again. I made a list. Not a list of goals or achievements. Not the kind of ambitious plans people scribble in January and forget by February. This was different. I wrote down everything I loved that I had put aside. Things that made me feel like myself. Things I had abandoned piece by piece over the years, telling myself there wasn't time, or it wasn't practical, or it wasn't what we needed. Photography. Hiking. Weekend road trips to nowhere. Cooking, not just to feed someone else, but because I genuinely loved it. Reading old dusty history books I used to get lost in. I decided I was going to rebuild my life, not to impress anyone, not to check off some box, but to build a life that felt true. Some decisions were easy. I canceled the cable subscription we barely used and used that money to book a solo trip to the mountains. 3 days alone in a tiny cabin, hiking during the day, reading by the fire at night. No phone service. No one expecting anything from me. Just me and the trees and the wide open sky. Some decisions were harder. I put the house up for sale. It wasn't because I couldn't afford to stay. I could. But that house was full of ghosts. Full of memories of waiting for a woman who was already gone. Full of spaces I didn't want to walk through anymore, pretending they hadn't been hollowed out. I didn't need a fresh start. I wanted one. Slowly, the future stopped looking like a threat and started looking like a blank page. There was still hurt. Still mornings when I woke up with the heavy ache of loss sitting on my chest. Still flashes of anger when some forgotten detail would surface and remind me of everything I had endured. But there was also something else now. Freedom. The freedom to be someone I actually liked again. The freedom to build a life without fear of it being dismissed or discarded by someone who only loved the version of me that served her needs. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone, not even to myself. I was just choosing, day after day, to move forward instead of looking back. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like winning.